When a verdict dropped on June 1st, 2022, Amber Heard stood still as if the world had suddenly tilted. Reporters yelled her name outside the courthouse. Cameras flashed like lightning, and social media exploded with hashtags that painted her as the villain of a story she believed she had survived. The trial hadn't just ended, it had detonated. And the shockwaves were about to hit her career harder than she imagined. Inside Hollywood offices, executives watched the televised courtroom drama like it was the Super Bowl. It wasn't just entertainment, it was risk assessment. Fame had always been reactive, but this time the backlash was nuclear. By the next morning, Amber's team received a quiet email from a major studio. "We're going in a different direction for this project." No explanation, no apology, just Hollywood code for "you're too controversial now." The memes, the TikToks, the nightly comedy monologues, they shaped the public perception faster than any PR team could respond. Overnight, Amber Heard had become a symbol rather than a person, and the industry didn't want symbols that came with lawsuits, petitions, and divided audiences. She could still feel the digital roar of millions analyzing every expression she made in court, every word she whispered to her lawyers, every tear. And while the world laughed, Amber realized something devastating. The trial wasn't the end. It was the beginning of her exile. Before the trial, Amber's schedule was stacked. 2 films in development, a limited series, a brand partnership, and an ongoing contract tied to a major franchise. After the trial, silence. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. The kind that rings in your ears because you know it used to be filled with phone calls and opportunities. One by one, the cancellations started. A production company reevaluated her role in a thriller she had verbally agreed to. The limited series she hoped would redefine her image suddenly went on hold. A fashion brand stopped returning calls. Even charity organizations quietly removed her from upcoming campaigns, fearing controversy. And then there was Aquaman 2. The studio never publicly fired her, but it didn't have to. Rumors leaked that her screen time had been cut to minutes. Fans debated whether she'd appear at all. For Amber, the uncertainty was worse than a direct rejection. Hollywood wasn't pushing her off the stage, it was shrinking her presence until she barely existed on it. Her team told her not to worry. It will blow over, they promised. But Amber sensed something was different this time. Hollywood wasn't waiting for the storm to pass. Hollywood was quietly building a world where she no longer had a place. By early 2023, Amber felt like she was living in a glass box. Paparazzi camped outside her door. Strangers recorded her every time she stepped into a grocery store. Her daughter's baby photos were monetized by tabloids she'd never spoken to. People whispered her name in airports like it was contraband. So she left. She didn't announce it. She didn't explain it. She simply packed her belongings, grabbed her daughter, and flew to Spain, a country where people spoke to her with warmth instead of judgment, where the tabloids weren't waiting around every corner, where she could walk down the street without hearing her name shouted like an accusation. For the first time in years, Amber felt invisible, but in the best way. She bought groceries without being photographed. She took walks without wearing sunglasses and a hat pulled low. She watched her daughter play on the beach without checking who was filming. In Spain, Amber didn't feel like a fallen movie star. She felt like a mother, a woman rebuilding her life from the ruins left behind by a very public war. And, slowly, she started to breathe again. The Hollywood version of Amber Heard, the polished, styled, media-trained actress, began to fade. In Spain, she let herself be human. She wrote in notebooks. She practiced Spanish with neighbors. She took acting classes online under a pseudonym. She read scripts that weren't tied to big studios, but to independent filmmakers who believed in second chances. She started thinking about storytelling differently, not as something to perform, but as something to live. What does resilience look like? What does survival sound like? Could she rebuild her career outside the system that pushed her out? Amber began working quietly on a small European film, something intimate and raw. No capes, no underwater kingdoms, no billion-dollar franchises. Just acting, the thing she actually loved before the headlines swallowed her name. For the first time since the trial, she felt a spark. It wasn't fame. It was purpose. Even from overseas, Amber could feel the chill coming from Los Angeles. Hollywood was moving forward without her, and fast. New faces replaced her on the magazine covers. Casting directors stopped considering her entirely. Projects she might have been perfect for were given to actresses with cleaner public images. Her agents tried, but studios always had the same concern. She's too polarizing. She's a liability. We don't want that kind of attention right now. Amber realized something painful but undeniable. Hollywood wasn't punishing her temporarily. Hollywood had written her off. Even actors with scandals usually found redemption arcs. But Amber's situation was different. The trial had become a cultural event, a meme generator, a public sport. People weren't just criticizing her. They were obsessed with hating her. And Hollywood doesn't take risks on people the internet turns into punchlines. For the first time in her career, Amber accepted that she might never return to the version of Hollywood she once knew. Today, Amber Heard lives a quieter life. Not defeated, transformed. Spain gave her something Los Angeles never could: space to heal. She works on smaller European projects, focusing on performance instead of publicity. She raises her daughter away from the noise. She writes. She studies. She grows. She knows the doors of Hollywood may never fully reopen for her. But maybe that's okay, because Amber isn't chasing the same dream anymore. She's building a new one that doesn't depend on approval from an industry that abandoned her the moment the world turned against her. Her story is no longer about what she lost. It's about what she found when everything fell apart. A new country, a new identity, and the freedom to start over on her own terms. Even after Amber left for Spain, Hollywood continued moving like she had never existed. Award shows aired montages celebrating the women of cinema, but her face was never included. Former colleagues posted reunion photos on Instagram, tagging everyone except her. It wasn't hate, it was erasure. A steady, polite silence that hurt more than public outrage ever could. Executives believed they were making a safe choice, avoiding controversy by cutting her out of conversations entirely. Film critics who once praised her performances acted as if those films had appeared out of thin air. Even gossip blogs, which had lived off her name for months, eventually found new drama. Amber felt herself becoming a ghost in an industry she had once fought to belong to. What pierced her the most wasn't the rejection. It was how easily she was forgotten. Hollywood didn't push her away. Hollywood simply looked past her. And yet, deep inside, something awakened, a stubborn conviction that her story wasn't over. She had lost her platform, her reputation, her voice, but she hadn't lost herself. And she wasn't ready to disappear quietly. In Los Angeles, Amber was always running, from auditions, from press tours, from scrutiny. But Spain slowed her down. Days were simpler, real. Her daughter became her anchor in a world that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Amber realized that motherhood forced her to confront the one thing she had always avoided: stillness. Without schedules, premieres, or studio demands, she found herself sitting on the floor, drawing with crayons, cooking simple meals, playing in quiet parks. No paparazzi, no headlines, no courtrooms. Her daughter didn't care about Hollywood. She didn't know what a trial was. She didn't understand fame or disgrace. She just saw Mama. Amber realized she didn't have to be a movie star to matter. She just had to be present. And that realization healed her in ways no public apology or studio comeback ever could. Motherhood didn't distract her from the pain. It transformed it. The noise around her quieted, and Amber slowly began reclaiming her identity, piece by fragile piece. Amber wasn't chasing fame anymore, but fate has a strange sense of timing. A Spanish film festival screened a small indie film she'd completed before the trial, barely marketed, barely known. But critics in Europe saw something American critics had overlooked. They saw rawness. They saw vulnerability. They saw an actress who had lived a life most fictional characters couldn't match. A respected French director reached out to her agent. then a German producer, then an Italian casting director. They didn't want a Hollywood version of Amber. Polished, styled, cautious. They wanted the woman who had survived chaos and come out with fire in her eyes. For the first time since the trial, her email inbox wasn't empty. For the first time, she felt wanted, not for press, not for scandal, but for her talent. America had closed one set of doors. Europe was offering her a new stage. Amber had spent years surviving on adrenaline. The trial, the backlash, the chaos. But Spain forced her to confront the emotional wreckage she had carried silently. She started therapy, something she had postponed for too long. Session after session, she unpacked everything. The humiliation of court, the betrayal of Hollywood, the hate online, the exhaustion of performing strength she didn't feel. Her therapist asked her something simple yet devastating. Have you ever allowed yourself to be human? That question shattered her. Amber had spent her whole life trying to be something. Beautiful enough, strong enough, calm enough, brave enough. But never allowed herself to be flawed, broken, vulnerable, a real human being. Slowly, she stopped pretending, stopped defending herself, stopped clinging to the image Hollywood once shaped around her. Healing wasn't glamorous. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. And for the first time, Amber found peace not on camera, but within herself. Time changes everything, even public outrage. By late 2024, the American audience had shifted to new celebrities, new scandals, new controversies. The internet moved on, not out of forgiveness, but out of boredom. And slowly, an unexpected conversation began emerging online. Did Hollywood go too far? Did Amber deserve to lose everything? Why do we cancel women harder than men? Not everyone agreed, but the tone was different, less hatred, more curiosity. Some watchers of the trial admitted the memes felt cruel in hindsight. Some grew uncomfortable with how gleefully the world mocked her. Some realized the trial had blurred entertainment and trauma in dangerous ways. Amber didn't rely on this shift. She didn't trust it, but she noticed it. And though she never said it out loud, a small spark of hope lit inside her. Not for Hollywood's forgiveness, but for humanity's memory to soften. In early 2025, Amber received an email she almost deleted, thinking it was spam. It was from a well-known European studio preparing a gritty psychological drama. The director wanted Amber for the lead, a complex, heavy, emotionally draining role. He wrote, "Only someone who has lived through fire can play this." Amber stared at the message for hours. For the first time in years, the possibility of true artistic rebirth was real. Not Instagram sympathy, not media redemption, real work, real acting, real storytelling. Taking the role terrified her, but walking away terrified her more. She said yes. The first day on set, Amber felt like her heart was shaking. Every insecurity returned. What if I'm not good enough? What if Hollywood was right? What if the world watches this and laughs again? But something changed when the cameras rolled. Her voice stabilized. Her breath deepened. Her instincts returned. Amber realized she had been acting her entire life, not on screen, but off it, pretending to be fine, pretending to be strong, pretending to be unbreakable. For the first time, she wasn't pretending. She was living the role, channeling the pain, the survival, the silence, the rebuilding. The crew watched in quiet awe. They weren't looking at a disgraced celebrity. They were looking at an actress. The film wrapped. Whispers of award potential spread across Europe. Nothing was guaranteed. Fame never is, but one thing was certain. Amber Heard was no longer defined by the courtroom, the memes, or Hollywood's rejection. She had built a new life, a new identity, a new career, one with fewer lights, fewer expectations, fewer lies. Hollywood might never reopen its doors, but Amber discovered something far more powerful than a comeback. Freedom. The freedom to choose her own narrative. The freedom to raise her daughter away from chaos. The freedom to act not for fame, but for meaning. Her story wasn't a fall from grace. It was a rebirth, far from the place that tried to erase her.